Greetings, and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is Honest Movie Reviews and Esoteric Schmackdown. So guys, I've seen a couple movies recently. In fact, we're going to talk about two of them. We're going to talk about the one I saw first, or actually talk about the one I saw second first, and then the one I saw first second. And so let's begin. The two movies we're going to discuss today are The Arrival and Doctor Strange. Both of these movies are typical Aquarian Age fare, meaning that the core plot line in either film has to do with time. And since time is an aspect of Saturn, and Saturn is the ruling planet of Aquarius in classical astrology, as an astrotheologian, as I look at the precession of ages, I would identify then that this would be an age of Aquarius, ruled by Saturn, and Saturn deals with time. So, just kind of a brief thing. If you'd like to know more about that, please check out my video, Ask an Alchemist, Is This the Age of Aquarius? Alright, with that said, let's talk about The Arrival. This movie is jarring, unsettling, it is inspiring, it leaves you with a kind of feeling. Now, maybe that's just me, although my wife, who's not me, in other words, she doesn't have the same interest in the esoteric as I do, she also felt unsettled at the end of the movie. Now, I think it's because this movie in particular has so many layers to it. I'm actually considering going to go back and see it today. It's Tightwad Tuesday, and in fact I might append this video, if it's not too long, with more. We'll see. No promises there, but it's so layered that, and by that I mean that all of the context relating to this story of aliens materializing, hovering effortlessly above the surface of the earth, being completely non-anthropomorphic. They're heptapods, meaning that they have 7 feet or 7 appendages. They walk around like this. They're really big, and which is a shout out, by the way, to any role players out there who played GDW's 2300. It reminded me of the cephalopod, the pentapods that they had in that game as a role-playing game. Really cool. So anyway, definitely the science behind how a vessel could float like that, of course, as an electromagnetic or an electric universe proponent, one whose cosmology is unified by that idea. It was very cool because I could see that what they had done is established an exclusion zone around themselves, so that they're essentially, this is kind of an interesting factoid, but in order for you to be separate from another body, right, you need to only relinquish 1 to 10 to the 7th electrons, or 1 in every 10 billion electrons. You let go of one of those, become more positive, and then you slowly float. That's how Superman does it, right? He sits out in the sun and he sucks up all that positive energy, the protonic energy, as it's coming in, shedding his electron mass, and then it allows him to levitate and float and lift large objects and all sorts of other stuff. We'll talk about Superman later in another esoteric schmackdown that I'm working on. Anyway, with this movie, it's so many layers. Anyone who's familiar with any kind of conspiracy theory would be like, because you're probably thinking Project Bluebeam is definitely in effect here. Project Bluebeam is the idea behind it is that the government is working through a series of unveilings in order to unify us as a people. And Wernher von Braun, who used to be the director of NASA, his secretary allegedly said that he had confessed to her that there were a series of progressive unveilings concluded with like a natural catastrophe or extraterrestrials showing up on the planet. But that's the subject matter of another thing. But this movie definitely would pull on that chord. It would resonate that chord, make you think about that. But ultimately, and this is where we're kind of moving into spoiler zone, so I don't want to ruin the movie for you unless you find that, because I won't actually break any plot points. I'm not going to sit here and go, this person died or this person does this thing. Instead, what I'm going to do is illuminate the concept that this movie bears fruit with, that brings to bear. And that is, so spoiler, in case you're a purist and you're like, no, la 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 la, don't tell me anything. So spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. If you're that kind of purist, this is me explaining a plot device. And this is the device. At one point, Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams, who both are magnificent, in fact, everyone in this movie yields a fantastic performance. I was just enthralled, and it's very believable. The whole story it's this extraterrestrial encounter that ultimately centers around a very human drama. And the device in this case is, and why to me it was jarring and why this movie was important to me, it's a presentation of everything that I've been trying to teach you on this channel, which is that as you learn this art, as you learn to decipher symbols, symbols are a language. A statue is a language. A building is art you live in, which is a language of expression. When you begin to understand this, that you are surrounded by this, it changes your brain chemistry as much as learning any other foreign language. And that's one of the plot points. It's brought up, and Jeremy Renner, he says, he brings up this idea that it's if you are immersed within a culture, that this alters your brain neurology fundamentally, because you begin to perceive reality in terms of the language which you understand. So, in similar terms, the language of these aliens, which Amy Adams encounters, is a language which alters your cognitive structure enough that you can see the world without time. It's amazing. It is the golden ring of the pursuit of alchemy and magic, in my opinion. Because by being able to do this, you are able to accomplish a great many things personally, and you are able to accomplish a great many things in the world. And in fact, this is what this movie expresses in its conclusion, which is its beginning. And so it was a really good movie. And when you leave, it feels like you've left a very dreamlike state. They do a lot of fascinating juxtapositions with Amy Adams' character. The movie begins with her in her living room, and every room that she seems to be in seems to have a large window on one side, and then she's kind of in a box. And of course, this is the same box that she is meeting the Heptapods inside the ship, as you see on the trailers, right? Where they go and they put their big hand against the glass, and she's like, that's an introduction. Well, you know, that's and then of course the discussion of what language is, that you can't just hear it and decipher it, right? That language exists as a complete expression of all the things which are taking place at the same time. And of course the Heptapods, it's a shout out then, because this race is visual in the expression of their language. Their language, their written language, is what alters your cognition because of its associative patterns. And by that it means that when you look at it, you're not just seeing a thing like the letter A. You're seeing a series of associative cognitive thought forms which yield a greater or heightened perception or conception of what it is that is being expressed. So that thesis and plotline was very appealing to me, and it is an apt device that I can use as a teacher in expressing how, when studying a statue, you're also looking at an expression of scientific principles, often when you are studying the more ancient classical works. That these expressions of divinity, as expressed in statuary form, their postures, their poses, expresses a litany of associations and meanings. And by learning how to read that, just as she learns how to read the script that these aliens teach her, you are freed. You're freed. So that's that movie. It was really good. I would. The fact that I'm thinking of seeing it again is an indication that. Yeah, it was a very good movie. So I'd give it 4.5 out of 5 alien starships. Perhaps the reason I'm withholding that half a point is because I fear that because of the complex nature of this movie and the heavy layering, that most people are going to perhaps be confused or lose sight of the narrative. Which is unfortunate, but I think that might actually be the case. Because of the way they jump around in time. Now you get a feel for this, and if you've ever experienced this jumping around, you have a feel for it, and so it's you know, it's cool. But if not, definitely I found myself offering explanations as to what was going on periodically. As I was asked, because it was like, well, where are we now? And it took me a moment to recognize what was taking place, and then once I saw it, it was beautiful. So, but that's the little tiny imperfection. It definitely, there's a hint of Trump presidency in this. That's just my guess, but because of the nature of the attitude of the president. And that, it just, anyway. So there's that movie. Then the next one that I saw, I saw this one twice, was Doctor Strange. Marvel Studios has cranked out another amazing movie. The storyline is virtually, it parallels the Iron Man original storyline quite a bit. And by that I mean you have a wealthy dude who's somewhat of a douchebag, but still a brilliant genius, who is confronted with a circumstance that results in a physical disability of some form or another that causes them to seek out a means of intervention in order for them to sustain themselves. And as a product of that, they both get a glowy thing that hangs around their neck or sticks by their chest. And as a result of that, then they have their powers. Now that's a super mean, superficial way of putting it, but I anticipate already that there are probably many reviewers out there that are like drawing that comparison, just because it can be drawn. Now, with that said, just as Robert Downey Jr. breathed life into a Marvel character that I was marginally interested in, that being Iron Man, and turned him into one of my favorites, Benjamin Cumberbatch is amazing. He is a remarkable actor. My daughter, who saw the movie with me, remarked that he does sort of Sherlock Holmes, Doctor Strange a little bit, And it does give you the sense that that very much might just be a bit of Benjamin bleeding out between all of his roles, that that's just him. And that's probably why he was cast in that role. Now, the special effects are extraordinary. I saw it both in 3D and in digital. I'm kind of 50-50 on the need to see in 3D. It was pretty cool, but it was just as cool in digital. Now, I did see it in digital the second time. So, but you definitely can tell when you watch it in digital that you're looking at a 3D effect at some point or another. So there's that. Probably want to see it in 3D just to gain an appreciation of the dimension of the magic, especially, for instance, when he's thrust into the astral plane or when he's moving between dimensional planes of existence. All of that's super duper amazing cool. The concepts in it are stuff that you've heard me mention here before. That it's essential, you know, to train the body to be familiar with certain expressions of discipline, so that the mind, when freed of the body, can still have access to those disciplines. And that could be a martial art, that could be a yogic art, that allows you to align your energy, right? Can you imagine in an astral form snapping into the warrior pose, bam, and then aligning yourself in rigid form, in preparation for whatever challenge you might face in the astral plane. So, yeah, that's it. All of that is introduced. There's an entire dialogue that I just absolutely loved, and not only when you're confronted with a teacher, the correct response is to ask to be taught, but with humility, for sure. Then the next thing is when you're in front of that teacher, to recognize that you're here and they're there, and to ask that question: how do I get from here to there? And they actually literally ask that question as he's trying to learn the magical arts, which I loved, because her response was, how did you become a world-renowned surgeon? And he said, years of practice and research and training and learning and reading. And she was like, and that's literally my response when folks are like, well, Aubrey, how do I get from here to where you're here? And it's like, well, guys, I didn't just start this, a short while ago. This is the product of me literally walking a dozen different paths, and finally just recognizing that each of these paths were expressions of a greater path. It's stuff that we're going to talk about more on this channel. But definitely it was a delightful opportunity to see this expressed, and also to see that virtually all of the magic that they use is plasma-based, meaning that when he wants to create an opening or gateway between one place and another, he has this ring, and then he does this thing, and it opens the spherical gateway, which incidentally looks very similar to the spherical script that was used in the Arrival. I'm not sure if that's an accident or not, or just they're borrowing each other's special effects, and they're like, this ink pattern would make a great plasma pattern. I don't know. Hollywood's known to be doing that kind of stuff. But either way, it's extraordinarily similar in the idea of time being managed through that kind of linguistic portal was neat. The other thing that brought to mind was CERN, right? Because it's essentially the same concept of you drive superconductive plasma around a coiled surface, right? And they say they're doing collisions. Who knows what they're actually doing? And what you can go places. Perhaps I've talked about this in another video as well. Stargate it. Think of things. Be imaginative. That's what the whole purpose of all this is to open your mind. A closed mind can't learn. An open mind can be a vessel of extraordinary joy to yourself and others. So anyway, so that's the superficial Doctor Who. The story is well done. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. The villain is one of my favorite actors because I can't remember his name right now. It's slipping my mind, but he does this amazing job in whatever he plays. He's just remarkable, and so he does this great job as a very sensitive villain who, in truth, may not be quite so villainous, except for the fact that he drank his own fruit punch. Like, he believed that whatever it was he was doing, in spite of the effect was still good. And that's, that's where a person, Spider-Man in the Captain America movie, when he says, I think he said, "You're dangerous," and he's like, "Why that?" And it's because you believe you're right. That makes you dangerous. So in that case, the villain is just like that, where he believes what he's doing is ultimately right, ultimately to everyone's benefit, even though it would destroy everything. So, and that drives the plot. And as a device of that plot, we learn that he's seeking to manage time, which Dr. Strange does very well. He's like one of these, Michael Jordan of magic type of thing. And they even point that out. And there's so much fun in that movie, so much that's entertaining. The cloak of levitation is amazing. It just is amazing. And the special effects are amazing. And like I said, Benjamin Cumberbatch is a remarkable actor who has taken one of the characters that I've enjoyed a great time in the Marvel Universe and reminded me why I loved Doctor Strange as a kid. For sure. It was awesome. So I would give Doctor Strange, wow, man. I guess, like, so hard to give a perfect 5 because there are maybe flaws. I mean, other than the superficial storyline flaw, right, which you gotta have that origin story thing at any point. So yeah, I'd say 5 out of 5 Dormammus. 5 out of 5 Dormammu Groundhog Days. You'll know what I mean when you get there. All right, so that was it. That was both movies. Sorry for getting misty-eyed a little bit on the Arrival. It really jars you if you consider the implication. If you really do, if you're like me, and you consider the implication, and you recognize that some of the things that you personally have discovered and have personally employed in your life in order to advance your learning are being expressed on the silver screen, you're sort of like, wow, this is really cool and beautiful. So with that said, I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist. This is the Modern Alchemist channel, and you've been watching Honest Movie Reviews and Esoteric Schmackdown. Thank you. I'll be talking to you soon.